Okay, so this is lecture 5 on topic poverty, inequality, and development. Okay, so once again, good morning, everyone. I hope you have a good time at home or anywhere you are at the moment. Well, last week, we have seen the topic on economic growth, uh, particularly on the factors of growth. Yeah. In any particular country. Um, and then towards the end, we were looking at the uh, uh, some of the characteristics of economic growth, ya, ataupun negara yang telah membangun, right? Um, what steps they have gone through, and also comparing whether or not the developing countries now uh, can follow the steps that the rest of the developed countries has gone through in terms of the development. Okay, so that's what we have covered last week. So today, I'm going to go with you over on the topic of poverty, inequality, and development. Okay, um, this is this topic is very peculiar um, because of the fact that the third world countries, many of the third world countries are facing the problem, facing the problem of poverty among its citizens, and also related to that is the issue of inequality in terms of income, yeah, um, among the population in the country. Okay, so let's start from there. Yeah. Okay. So in the third world countries, poverty and unequal distribution of incomes are something which are quite common, yeah. And in some countries, it's getting worse. Um, the 1970s actually was the beginning of the changes in the perception towards the objective of economic development, right? Um, Previously, before that, the objective of economic development is to industrialize, yeah, for every country to, I mean, the measurement for development then was measured on um, how far ataupun berapa banyak industri yang ada di negara berkenaan. Okay. So it became obvious around 1970 that the pursuit of development actually intensified poverty, right? In other words, yes, the country developed in terms of economic growth, in terms of what do you call this, GDP, GNP naik, tetapi at the same time ada di kalangan penduduk di dalam negara berkenaan masih miskin, ataupun sebaliknya perbezaan di antara yang kaya dengan yang miskin semakin widen. Yeah. So in the 1980s, also according to Bellow in 1999, was marked by a sharp increase in poverty and inequality throughout the third world countries. And things have changed a bit, but I think the majority of the third world countries are still facing the problem of poverty and inequality. Okay, so there are 7 critical questions with regard to economic growth controversy. Yeah? The first one is that what is the extent of relative inequality and how is it is this related to the extent of poverty? The two things, relative inequality and also poverty, are they related? Then next question is another critical question is, who are these people who we classify as poor? Right? Are there any particular groups who are likely to be poor in relation to the others? Who benefits from economic growth? Yeah, that's another critical question. The country is growing economically, but who are really those people who gains more from the economic growth? Does number four, does rapid growth necessarily cause greater income inequality? Because it does seems like uh, different countries have shown that with increase in economic growth, um, there seems to be increase also in terms of income inequality. Number five, another critical question is, do the poor benefit from economic growth? I think that's a very important question to ask. And number six, are the high levels of inequality always bad? Adakah jurang perbezaan di antara kumpulan-kumpulan yang kaya dengan yang miskin itu, ataupun yang lower income group, in other words, is that always bad? Ya? Ataupun it's okay, depending on the income of those lower income group rather than the higher income group. And very important question also is with regard to what policies can reduce poverty. Okay, so those are some critical questions that we need to address, yeah, in dealing with the issue of poverty and inequality. Can you hear me well? Boleh dengar?
Boleh, Prof.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so poverty refers to the condition or having means to afford basic human needs. Contohnya having clean water, nutrition, healthcare, clothing, shelter, and so on. Yeah? So this is also referred to as absolute poverty. Yeah, ataupun another term for that is destitution. There is another form of poverty, the concept of relative poverty, which we'll look at it later on. Yeah. Whereby when we talk about relative poverty, it refers to the condition of having fewer resources or less income than others in the country or in the region or within a society or country, ataupun compared to the world average. Jadi between the two, absolute poverty is definitely the worst. Yeah, relative poverty is you may belong to the relative poverty group, but you still can live comfortably. But in relation to the rest who are better off than you, for example, you are considered as uh, poorer lah, in a way. Okay, so what is poverty? There's so many ways of looking at poverty, not just the number of income or the amount of income. Sorry. One is one very common one is, of course, when a person or family is lacking the essentials of life. Yeah, they lack the essentials of life, lacking in income, lacking in food, clothing, housing, water supply, and so on and so forth. Yeah? That is the term that we have seen early on as the absolute poverty. Yeah, absolute poverty. The other form of poverty that I've seen early on is the relative poverty, which is basically when a person or family is lacking in the ability to enjoy the standard of living that most other people enjoy. And this is where, you may have a house, you may be, hold on, let me fix my battery is running low. Yeah, okay, that should do it. Right. So, as I said, in the country, everybody is doing okay, lah, yeah. But there are people who are much doing better than you in terms of standard of living, for example, yeah. So you're not suffering from lack of food. You're not suffering for not having a house, but the quality of house you're staying may be, less, yeah, compared to other people, the majority of people, in other words. Ataupun jenis kereta, you have a car, but others have cars too. But the kind of car you drive is probably the cheaper ones. That's the kind of thing when we talk about relative poverty. So because of that, relative poverty is always present, regardless of whether the country is rich or poor. Okay? Tapi absolute poverty itu mungkin dalam bagi negara yang sudah membangun, mungkin they have zero absolute poverty ataupun they have a very very low percentage of absolute poverty in the country. Yeah. So so one of the ways also to look at poverty is looking at the state of living on income level below half of the national average. Um, So that is another way to look at poverty when the income level that one has falls below half of the national average. Shortage of common things such as food, clothing, shelter, safe drinking water, all of which determine the quality of life. And this is also the characteristics of poverty as well. Lacking access to opportunities as well. Yeah? Um, to education, to employment, which otherwise actually can help to escape, can help the person to escape from poverty. But because of the lack of the opportunities, or lack of access to opportunities, yeah, the person remain okay, classified as poor as well. Also um, lacking in terms of choices. Sorry, that is not or. Supposed to be. Let me correct that first. Lack of choices, actually. Yeah. Some people who doesn't have any choice at all. For example, beggars. Yeah, beggars cannot be choosy. Whatever people give, yeah, they have to accept. Like if a beggar asks for money, you give 1 ringgit, dia pula tak mau. No, I want 10 ringgit. But that's not no. There is no choice. Yeah. He doesn't have that choice. He's not cannot be choosers in that particular situation. Okay. So the World Banks in the article called "Voices of the Poor," which was based on research with over 20,000 people in 23 countries, also identified a range of factors which poor people identify as part of poverty. Yeah, as part of poverty. So this include precarious livelihood, difficult livelihoods, yeah, living as excluded locations, um, physical limitations, problem with gender relationships, yeah, problem in social relationships, and these are also part of the apa nama tu factors, yeah. A lack of security, abuse by those in power, uh, institution ada tapi disempowering, ya, limited capabilities, and also weak community organizations. These are factors, according to the study by the World Bank, which actually contribute to poverty, yeah, among those people in those countries that they conducted the study. Okay, right. So yeah, so one um, can be in poverty because of the conditions ataupun situation that person is in, yeah, and so on. Okay, here are some of the images of poverty, particularly both in the urban as well as outside of the urban area, as well as in the rural areas. Yeah? This is quite the first one here. This is quite common situation. Yeah, Kwasan Stinggan, for example. Yeah, outside of the main city area where they build houses. Yeah, um, and yet some of these houses they do not have access to water. Some do not have even access to electricity, and also the environment is also um, difficult. Yeah. Um, okay. It's another one. This is example of poverty as well. This is more likely to be also um, urban poverty. Yeah, living outside of the city itself, and they don't have proper housing and so on. And so the children of these people in this area may have problem accessing schools, education, yeah, and so on. So often, very often, they're left, yeah, behind. They couldn't afford schooling in the city area. This is a picture of a family, um, rural areas. Yeah, that's the kitchen and so on. And this is in Africa, quite common, um, where they don't even have classroom. Yeah, for school. Okay, no proper classroom where they do the learning. You know that. I'll say more images. Some of this may be some of you may be familiar with this kind of apa nama condition seperti inilah, pernah pernah tengok kan, right? Uh, Look at the sanitation, yeah, uh, and people also this is quite um, it's something that I have seen myself. Yang bawah nih on the left side, yeah. Um, we were doing a study in Bintulu and also Kuching uh, with regard to apa nama tu pembuangan sampah lah, ya, pembuangan sampah. We were looking at the issue, the apa nama tu penggunaan um, for example waste uh, from gas and so on in Bintulu, and we have to go to the dumping site to see where they dump the waste, and that's the one that they convert into organic fertilizer. So while we were there, this is not the one that we actually were at. This is just another picture, similar. We could see people, yeah, going over the rubbish and all that, trying to gather something which they can recycle and sell, right? Metal bottles and whatnot, yeah, which they can sell for recycling and so on, right? So, and unfortunately, some of these people who were there were rural urban rural-urban migrant yang telah pindah ke kawasan bandar di Bintulu, for example, hoping to be employed in one of those sectors, sama ada sektor perkhidmatan ataupun sektor perindustrian dan sebagainya. But unfortunately, for some reason, some ended up without jobs. So in order to survive, they have to do something lah, where they can make a bit of money for survival. Okay, this is in Europe. Also, despite some of these countries are very rich, there are also poor people. Yeah, and this guy maybe because of his disability ataupun mempunyai health problem, we don't know, but he is probably he has no opportunities to get employment and so on. So he ended up begging on the street. Okay, there's another picture. Here also, a homeless person, carry his stuff everywhere he goes in this trolley. Daytime they what they do is just gather all the stuff, put in the trolley, and they push it somewhere. At night, they find a place where they can sleep, right? And because they don't have a home, could be under a bridge or by the roadside and so on and so forth. Okay, so all right, so poverty is still there, even now, but it is declining, declining overall. So the global poverty as of 1999 was about 29%, in the world. By 2012, that number stood at more or less 900 million people who are considered poor, or about 13% of the world population. So there has been a decrease, declining in the percentage of world population who are poor. The latest data as of 2013 estimates, this is more or less about 10 years ago, but just to give you some ideas, um, about 776 million people are living below the international poverty line. Yang mana international poverty line adalah 1.9 US, $1.90 US dollar per person per day. So there is a decrease, if you compare 2012. So that's the trend. It is decreasing. And according to the World Bank projections, 9.6% or equivalent to 700 million people of the world population in 2015 are living below the poverty line. And most of these poor people are in sub-Saharan Africa as well as in Asia. Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. If you do have any question, you just stop me. Okay. Recent estimate also for global poverty, that 9.2% of the world population, or about 689 million people, live in extreme poverty, on less than or $1.90 a day or less, according to the World Bank. And in 2020, global poverty is expected to rise, or was expected to rise, for the first time in 20 years. And some of these are due to what we are experiencing now, the COVID-19 pandemic, which actually threatens to push about 88 million to as many as 115 million people into extreme poverty in the year 2020. Okay, and it could still rise to as much as 150 million by 2021. I think that is pretty clear because of the problem with COVID-19. A lot of people are losing employment, they do not have a job, and so on. So that is the contributing factor, yeah, towards the increase in the poverty globally in the year 2020, 21. So, okay, so if we look at by regions, yeah, by selected regions where poverty prevails, as we can see, much of that is in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, right? Although in other part of the world also they have, but the highest number are in this Panama, Sub-Saharan Africa, and also in South Asia. And if you look at the actual, this is percentage up here, but this is down here, is the number of people who are poor, yeah, number impoverished in millions. The world as a whole is about 200 or 700 plus million. Tapi kebanyakannya adalah di Sub-Saharan Africa dan South Asia. Right? So this one should be read together with the table on top ataupun the graph on top here. Okay, so those are the more or less just to show where poverty is more prominent if you look at the regions of the world. Okay, and this one is just also sharing with you on the world's poorest countries. Yeah. So if you look at this one, on one side, you're looking at the GDP growth, yeah? And on the other is per capita, yeah, per capita, GDP per capita, sorry. Right, so you can see from here the differences in different countries of the world that in terms of the growth in GDP, it may contribute to the wealth. It should, by the way, should contribute to the increase, yeah, in income for the people in the country. Unfortunately, there's some countries, even though the growth, for example, let's say, let us see here. Example, this is between 2020 and 2019, by the way, yeah. The 20, the lighter color, yeah, that's the growth in the GDP growth, yeah. And it contributes to the income per capita, yeah, GDP per capita as well. Right, so yeah, so the overall some countries have growth in GDP, some have decrease in GDP. But yeah, but it also coincide with the increase in the GDP per capita and so on. So there is some have relationship with the growth GDP. For example, if you look at Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and so on. But if you look at countries macam, let's say, the Tajikistan, sorry, the 2020 GDP growth is less than the 2019, but the overall GDP per capita increase. So there is a relationship, yeah, between growth, but at the same time some countries menunjukkan sebaliknya lah. There's no consistency in terms of the GDP growth. This one just to show you quickly. This is based on Asian Development Bank report, yeah. Quite early, not now, but just to share with you. Bangladesh, for example, apa nama ni, people living in poverty, right? Um, compared to Sri Lanka or compared to the Philippines and so on. Yeah. So population living below 1.51 dollar per day. Yeah. Percentage of total. So you can see the most numbers are in Bangladesh, in India, Papua New Guinea, and so on. Right? And this is the actual number of people in millions on this side. This is the percentage. Okay. So, all right. So that's the situation, yeah? Global scenario in terms of poverty in the world. Okay, there are two things we have mentioned earlier on regarding the two concepts, absolute poverty and relative poverty. Now, absolute poverty, this is where people are unable to command sufficient resources to satisfy their basic needs. In other words, they cannot get the necessary resources, yeah, to meet their basic needs. While as relative poverty refers to the proportion of the population who are poor secara relative in relation to the whole population in the country. Okay. So increasing the GNP ataupun gross national product ataupun economic growth will help to reduce absolute poverty. Okay, but the rate of relative poverty will probably change little or remain the same. Jadi itu kesannya apa nama tu GNP ataupun economic growth ke atas uh, apa nama kemiskinan, sama ada absolute ataupun uh, relative poverty. Okay, so again, that's the same thing, yeah. Just talking about relative. So those things, when you talk about absolute poverty, you're talking about the basic necessities for survival, which are lacking, yeah, among those families or people who live in poverty. All right. So in a way, absolute poverty is describing the absolute minimum level of resources which are needed to ensure the survival of the person and not an absolute amount of currency. It's in other words, it's how much. Even though people say it's just $1.52 or $1.90 minimum, okay, poverty line tadi. In other words, for a person to be able to live, yeah, beyond that poverty line. Tetapi it depends on actually is the resources, not just the money, not the absolute amount of currency tadi, yeah. It's what you can get, for example, yeah, with that amount of money. So it may differ. In some poorer countries, with the same amount of money, you may be able to get more resources, yeah, because things can be cheaper compared to if you are in a different regions or different country. You can click on this up here at, later on at your own time, just to get more information regarding the issue of inequality and also relative poverty. Yeah. All right. Quickly at this, these figures, I think some of these I've mentioned earlier on with regard to the some facts regarding global poverty. Right, over 3 billion people of the world, out of 7 billion plus people, 3 billions live on less than $2.50 US dollar a day. Okay. So the $1.25 a day level is accompanied with some additional explanations and reasoning, including that it is a common level found among the poorest countries. Okay, so 125 is the level among poorest countries. Remember, it is the resources that is important, yeah? Not so much the apa nama itu tadi, the currency, the US dollar. And $2.50 represents a typical poverty level among many more developing countries. Jadi perbezaan terdapat ya dalam negara-negara tersebut. The more developing countries, more advanced lah, more or less ya. The rate is 250. And the World Bank in 2015 updated the international poverty line, a global absolute minimum to 190 per day, yeah, instead of 125 as it was in 2008. Sebabnya adalah mengambil kira inflasi, ya, inflasi. Now, people living at $1.35 or less a day were defined as living in extreme poverty. So those people who are living on that level ataupun kurang are considered as extreme, living in extreme poverty. Yeah. Okay, so right, but now it is 190 lah. So for many years before that, it had been $1 a day sebagai apa nama minimum, right? A poverty line ketika itu ya. So it has been increasing over the years, and in taking into account the inflation rate, maka ianya berubah ya daripada $1 to 125 to 145, and then now we have 190 ya sebagai the level ya poverty line tadi. Okay. Some facts also: 1 billion children worldwide are living in poverty, and about 22,000 children die each day due to poverty, according to UNICEF. Okay, also about 800 million people worldwide do not have enough food to eat, and the food banks are especially important in providing food for the people that can't afford it themselves, of course. Many are lacking, about 750 million people are lacking adequate access to clean drinking water. So that affects the health of the people as well. Yeah, diarrhea, for example, caused by inadequate drinking water, poor sanitation, and hand hygiene kills an estimated about 800 million. I'm sorry, 800,000 people every year globally. Yeah, approximately 2,300 per day. Itu tidak termasuk lagi kematian yang disebabkan oleh COVID-19 pandemic. Right. What else? Some more figure. 2011, 165 million children under age 5 were stunted. Ya, stuntednya apa nama tu? The growth, ya, tumbuhan kanak-kanak, ya, their development stunted because of poverty. Okay, due to chronic malnutrition. Preventable diseases like diarrhea, pneumonia also takes the lives of more children, 2 million children a year, who are too poor to afford proper treatment. Something which are preventable, ya, boleh dibantu, ya, can be treated, but unfortunately because of them being poor, so many children die. Jadi kanak-kanak itu merupakan apa nama itu those vulnerable group lah ya, who are likely to suffer as a result of poverty. Okay, as of 2013, 21.8 million children under 1 year of age worldwide had not received 3 recommended doses of vaccine seperti diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. Why? Because they are too poor. The country may not be able to provide free vaccination, right? So many of the children remain unvaccinated. And many, in terms of electricity, about quarter of all humans live without electricity, which is about 1.6 billion people in the world. Jadi we take for granted we have electricity, particularly for those who are living in the urban areas, but there are people who are poor, including those in the interior part of the country, who do not have access to 24-hour electricity as well. Okay, 80% of the world population lives on less than $10 a day, and according to estimate from Oxfam ni satu organisasi di UK, estimate that it would take about 60 billion annually US dollar annually to end extreme poverty, global poverty. But that is less than one quarter of the income of the top 100 richest billionaire. Jadi isunya di sini adalah there are people who are very rich, but all it takes is just one quarter of the income actually will be able to solve the problem or to end up extreme global poverty. Okay. Right. The 5 countries with highest number of extreme poverty are India, Nigeria, Democratic Republic Congo, Ethiopia, and Bangladesh. And by the way, Ethiopia sekarang ini pun mengalami masalah, ada internal conflict going on, and that worsen actually buatkan keadaan lebih teruk lagi lah, worsen the situation in the country. Right? Okay. This is based on the article, as you can find in this link here, right, about the living conditions, among these poor countries. Okay, if you're interested, I won't go into this, but you can click on this link to read more, on the. Perhaps I just show you kalau boleh lah. Kejap, so this is the one actually. I don't think you can see now. The article that I mentioned. Sorry. Let's stop sharing the first one and share this one. This is the one that I'm telling you about the poorest countries in the world and some of the descriptions and all that, berkenaan dengan perkara tersebut. Right, so you can access this one, read more on this, different countries. Mozambique, hold on, it's about poorest countries in the world. Started with Madagascar, then you have Liberia, Mozambique, Niger. Niger is not Nigeria. Niger is a kind of small country in Africa. And we have the Democratic Republic of Congo, of course, that's one of the poorest countries in the world. Malawi as well. Central African Republic, Somalia. At one time, this country, Somalia, is actually a war-torn country. Banyak peperangan, banyak konflik di Somalia. Okay, and Sudan, Burundi. Those are the negara. So number one actually is Burundi lah, the poorest country, followed by Sudan, Somalia, and so on. Right. So most of these countries, as you can see, are in Africa. Ada juga termasuk Pakistan, Bangladesh, and so on. But majority of the countries here are in Africa. Termasuk juga some countries like Nepal, Indonesia, and so on. Right? So if you want to, I would urge you to click on the link later on at your own time untuk melihat, untuk membacanya. Okay. All right, let's go back to share balik tadi. Yeah. go back to my notes. Okay. All right. Nampak ni nota ni? Hopefully,
Nampak.
okay. Hopefully, I have the right screen to share. Okay, this is on the note just now. One of the success stories on poverty reduction is the one by China. Yeah, it is a success story. For example, the China's poverty rate have fell from 85% in 1981. In other words, in 1981, 85% daripada penduduk di negara China, of course, but you have to consider jugalah, the population of China is big, yeah. One at the moment is 1.2 billion, something like that, or 1.3 billion. So 85% of the population in China in 1981, which was almost 1 billion then, were poor. Yeah. Tapi sekarang ini it has gone down to 15.9% ataupun equivalent to 600 million people, yeah, have been relieved from poverty. Yeah. 600 million people have been relieved from poverty. Sudah dilepaskan dari uh, uh, kemiskinan. Ya, itu adalah disebabkan oleh polisi yang telah dijalankan oleh negara China. But of course, without the economic growth that China is having now, ia ini tidak dapat dilakukan, right? But it is possible because of the high economic growth in China, right? Alright. So the impact boleh kita lihat di sini ya, if I can share with you on this side. Okay, the first one on this side on the left of my screen is the poverty levels over time of the world in terms of percentage. Yeah. So say the blue one is $1 per day. Then the purple one, for example, is $2 per day, and so on. Jadi the percentage of people who are living on that has actually gone down, yeah, over the years. Yes, secara in the world as a whole, quite steady decline. But as you can see on the other side, this graph on the other side here, which exclude China, okay, exclude the population in China. Okay, jadi ianya menunjukkan declining rate also, tetapi agak mendatar, not as steep as the one when China is included. Jadi maksudnya di sini, if China is excluded, poverty fell only around 10%. Right, only around 10%. Jadi kebanyakan penurunan ini of more than 10% so on adalah disebabkan oleh when taken into account what was happening or is happening in China in terms of poverty reduction. So one is of course because the number of people, size populasi China yang besar lah, so that overall has an impact on the global rate as well. Okay, itu yang saya nak tunjukkan di sini. Right, so let's look at Africa. What percent of Africa is poor? In 2010, 414 million people were living in extreme poverty in the sub-Saharan Africa, and which is by that time, poverty was defined as people living with 1.25 cent or less per day. And according to the World Bank, those living on $1.25 a day accounted for about 48.5% of the population in that region. Almost 50% of the people in the sub-Saharan region who are living in extreme poverty. right? So again, if you want to click, I provide the link here for you to look at the details, countries in South in Africa, right? Okay, so that's Africa. And the world as a whole, uh, what percent of the world is rich? By the way, how many people, or rather percentage of people who are rich? The well 1%, 1% dari penduduk dunia, richest people, 1% of richest people in the world amounts to 100 trillion US dollars. Itu kekayaan 1% of the world's richest, ya, 1%, which is equivalent to 15 times more than the wealth held by the bottom 70% of the population in the world. Ya, 70% daripada penduduk dunia uh, apa nama tu um, is having 15, ya, 1/15 daripada kekayaan the 1% of the richest world in the world. Itu maksudnya, ya. So the poorest 40% of the world population accounts for 5% of the global income. Yeah. Poorest 40% world population account for 5% global income, and the richest 20% apa nama tu accounts for 3/4 of the world population. So that means that there is inequality, yeah, global wealth inequality in the world is real, yeah. Okay, some pictures just to say. So that's, for example, a few rich people have so much wealth, and a large number of people who are poor are having the same amount of wealth owned by the few rich people. That's what I can say from there. And this is the situation of rich people, poor people. Okay, saya cuba baca, eh. This guy here says, this is your son. Dia banyak sini, riches. Yeah, it's been in the family for generations. Jadi orang kaya. Tapi orang yang miskin, okay, poverty. And that is, it has been a family also for generations. Yeah, so you hand over to the next generation unless something is done drastically to change the condition, particularly for the poor. Yeah, programs or strategies on how to solve the problem of poverty. Okay, so there is a great imbalance between the rich and the poor. Yeah. For example, the world's 85 richest people own the same amount of wealth as 3.5 billion poorest people in the world. Or the other way of looking at it, top 1% of the world will be richer than the rest of the world combined. So, more or less, just to illustrate the imbalance, yeah, in terms of income, yeah, among the people globally. Uh, some figures as well, and this is percentage of, if you want to know lah, siapa yang kaya di dunia ni by countries. Most of these people are, of course, in United States, yeah. Um, then you have the rest of the world. But now China, itu dulu 2015 was China didn't have much, but now China has improved so much. In fact, China's tapi ini we talking about millionaires, ya, not just talking about apa nama tu the GNP ataupun GNP di sebuah negara lah. Jadi dari segi milenial, kebanyakan orang yang kaya adalah the United States. Okay, the rest are in other parts of the world, of course lah. but 4% are in China, only in China now. But I think they have increased that number. I think there are a lot more rich people in China now than it was in 2015. Anyway, just to give you something. And in Latin America, negara South America lah, has the highest disparity rate in the world between the rich and the poor. So we're talking about inequality di sini ya. For example, income inequality in the region had worsened with the richest 10% of population earning 48% of the total income. Kalau betul tak ada, I mean, if there is no inequality, then the top 10% should be earning 10% of the total income lah, kalau macam tu kan. Tapi sebaliknya tidak. Apa yang berlaku adalah the top 10% earns almost 50% of the total income, while the poorest 10% of the people in the country earns only 1.6% of the total income. Jadi tidak ada apa nama in terms of distribution of income, yeah, unequal. So race has also been a factor where indigenous, orang asli, and the Afro-descended people, African yang black, yeah, are at a considerable disadvantage with respect to the whites, yeah, whereby orang kulit putih ni, the whites, earning much higher income. Right? So this is in the book by Victor Topman and O'Donnell, yeah? Issues and Challenges. So how do we measure inequality and poverty? Right? One is looking at the size distributions. Yeah, size distribution, it deals with individual persons or households and the total incomes they receive. Okay, so the source of income tak penting, yeah, it doesn't matter lah. Income come from agriculture ke, from industry ke, from service ke, whatever it is, asalkan bukan dari dicuri lah. Okay, so deals with the individual persons or household and the total income received. And then the total population, individuals or household are arranged in ascending personal incomes and divided into deciles ataupun 10 bahagian lah, ataupun kuintal ataupun 5 bahagian. Jadi then determine what portion of the total national income is received by each income group. Contohnya, berapa percentage of the total income of the country earned by the top 10%, by the bottom 10%, by the top 20%, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so that's the distribution, the size distribution tadi. And then you look at the bottom 20% and compare with the top 20% of the population and see how much incomes do they have. Okay, how much incomes do they have? So definitely those in the top are earning more lah, right? So this is just an example of how you can analyze, yeah, the inequality in the country. Contohnya table 5.1, the typical size distribution of personal income in the developing country by income shares ataupun quintiles and deciles. Okay, this one here is the deciles, this one is the quintiles. Yeah. Right, so if you look at this one, the apa nama tu, the share of total income by the, let's say we use decile tadi. Okay, decile. The first decile, sebahagian 10, 1.8%. Right? Kalau betul dia sepatutnya 10% kan, 10% of the population should be earning 10% lah. Tapi tidak. Okay? And the next decile, 3.2%. Tapi the top 10% up here, down here, sorry. Top 10% of the population are earning 28.5% of the total population. I'm sorry, of total income in the country, in this particular country. Right? So this is their personal income tadi. Jadi, so and then this the other the other bahagian 10 tu. So if you look at the top 20%, you combine this one and this one, you get agak berapa? 22 plus 28, 48, 49% of the income belongs to those 20%, top 20% of the population. Yeah. So the rest are divided by the other 80%. Okay. So itu yang menunjukkan apa nama ni uh, the income inequality. Yeah. All right. So the measure of inequality equals to ratio of top 20% to bottom 40%. Jadi kita, if you look at this is the top 20%. We divide it by the bottom 40%. 1, 2, 3, 4 sampai sini. Alright, so that's how it is. Yeah. Right. So in the Philippines, this is how it looks like. Yeah. The top 10% of the population in Philippines are earning 35.3% of the total income in the country. Let's say so. This is the first, the bottom 10%, only 2%. The second 10%, only 3%. So if you combine this 40% here, first to fourth, which the bottom 40%, kita combine 4.8 plus 4, 8.8 plus 2, 10.8 plus 3, 13.9 percent of the 13.9% of the income, national income, is earned by the bottom 40%. Ya, itu cara melihatnya. Right? And if you combine the 9 and the 10, which is the top 20%, 16, 3, 9, sorry, 5, 1. Berapa tu? Let's see. 40%? I'm sorry, 50. Yeah, more than 50% earned by the top 20% of the population. Okay, so itu even in developing countries such as Philippines. So inequality. Jadi one of the so itu cara yang pertama lah untuk kita membuat analisis terhadap inequality untuk melihat bagaimana terdapat ataupun tidak inequality dalam sesebuah negara. The other method which is quite commonly used is what is known as the Lorentz curve and the Gini coefficient. Gini coefficient is an indicator of level of inequality. Second most common measure of inequality, ada the distribution yang kita lihat awal tadi. So ini menunjuk, this is what is known as the Lorentz curve. Okay, on the horizontal axis adalah percentage of population. Okay, macam tadi lah, the top 20%, 40%, 60%, and so on. Yeah, and then on this vertical side is the percentage of share of the national income. Okay. Okay, this line here, as you can see, is a straight line that goes from one corner to the other, which indicate that this is the line of equality. In other words, how do you read that? In other words, 20% of the population should be earning, 20% of the population should be earning 20% of the national income. 40% of the population should be earning 40% of the national income. Jadi tidak ada masalah sini ya. So 80% of the population earning 80% of income. That is the line of equality. There is no inequality di sini. Right? But in actual fact, what happened is the actual curve, actually, if you draw the curve, yeah, it normally is falling below the poverty, the line of equality tadi. Okay. So, also, by the way, before that, let me explain a little bit on this guy known as who discovered, who came up with this Lorentz curve, yeah, this uh, apa nama Lorentz curve atau analisis menggunakan Lorentz curve tadi, ya, menggunakan Gini coefficient. Lorentz curve ini dibuat oleh was developed by a man called Max Lorentz in 1905. Um, so it shows the degree of inequality that exists in the distribution of two variable. Dua variable tadi. One is the percentage of population. The other is the percentage of income, percentage of national income. So the Gini coefficient, that's the first one, you're talking about the curve, but the Gini coefficient um, was, on the other hand, was invented by statistician Corrado Gini, his name, that's how the name came about. As an equality diagonal represents perfect equality. Seperti tadi lah. So this line here is representing a perfect equality. Tidak ada inequality. Yeah. So at every point, cumulative population equals cumulative income. Okay. So cumulative income, contoh tadi 20% dari penduduk, cumulative income-nya sepatutnya 20% juga lah. 80% penduduk, cumulative income-nya sepatutnya 80% juga. Itu baru dikatakan sebagai equality. Okay. All right. So, all right, let's go to the next one. So this is the Lorentz curve sebenarnya, and this is the line of equality. And this one comes from the actual figure that we have, yeah, in terms of apa nama tu, the amount of income earned by the apa nama group kumpulan-kumpulan tadi lah, yeah. So in this case, definitely 60% of the population are not earning 60% of the share of the income. Kalau sepatutnya di atas ini, ya, but instead it's down here. So they're earning less than what they should be earning. Okay, so there is, in other words, is inequality, ya, yang terdapat dalam sebuah negara. Jadi caranya, for example, for the Lorentz curve, it shows the actual quantitative relationship. Okay, for example, this one and this one shows a quantitative relationship between the percentage of income recipients and the percentage of total income received in a particular year. So, untuk setahun lah, untuk satu tahun. So approximately, if you look at the figure sini, approximately about 20%, the bottom 20% is receiving about 5% of the total income. Yeah. So this 20% of population are earning just about 5% of the total income. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So, and the poorest 80% of the world population earns just about 50% of the total income. Jadi balik kepada graph tadi. So this is the 80% of population. They are just earning about, if you look from the side, yeah, and yeah, take it from there, 50% here, that is equivalent to at a point of 80% of the population. Jadi 80% daripada penduduk hanya mendapat lebih kurang 50% daripada share of the national income tadi. Yeah. And the top 20% of the population receive more than 50%. Jadi yang lebih tadi lah, lebih tadi, ya, this 80 to 100 sini, these are the top 20%. They are earning the rest of the, which is 50% of the national share of the national income. Okay, that's how you read it. So all these figures here, okay, 10%, A, B, C, all these points here indicate the percentage of the income of the country earned by the group of people, yeah, by percentage of people or recipient tadi. Okay, so this is one way of looking at it. For example, it depends lah. Different countries have different shape, yeah, in terms of Lorentz curve. It doesn't have to be the same, yeah. Bergantung kepada banyak mana inequality di dalam sebuah negara. Bagi sebuah negara yang where the top 10% of the population are earning like 80% of the share of income, you can see that the line here, the Lorentz curve will be lower, yeah, will be lower. Banyak pergi ke luar sini lah. Right, so this is how you read that, yeah. Okay, so if you can go through that, it's just basically the same thing I was trying to explain. Macam mana how you read the graph. Okay, the other thing is with regard to the Lorentz curve adalah how you come out with the Gini coefficient. Jadi Gini coefficient ini adalah merujuk kepada conceptually it refers to this area A and area B. If you look at this graph here, okay, let's say this is triangle. Area A is the area between the line of equality dengan Lorentz curve. Okay, and area A plus area B is the area under the line of equality sinilah, A plus B. Jadi the Gini coefficient conceptually refers to the ratio of area A dibandingkan dengan the total area under the line of equality, the triangle sini. Okay, so maknanya kalau area A di besar, let's say this line yang akan turun, maka nilai Gini coefficient akan meningkat, ya, lebih tinggi. Sebaliknya kalau line area A ni kecil, ya, closer to the line of equality, maka Gini coefficient akan menjadi kecil juga. Alright, so you can see that relationship, ya. So the ratio of the area between the Lorentz curve A and the line of equality to the total area of the triangle, yeah, that's the Lorentz Gini coefficient. So the bigger area A is, in relation to the area A plus B, the greater will be the inequality. In other words, Gini coefficient will be higher. So in the less developed country, inequality is more prominent, and you could see the area A itu banyak lebih besar, ya. This line of curve ni lebih turun ke sebelah sudut sini, ya. Okay, just a comparison di sini. This is graph yang sini menunjukkan a relatively equal distribution, tak banyak beza, ya. The equality ataupun inequality itu kecil, ya, di keadaan yang sebelah kiri. While as if we compare to this one here, ini menunjukkan inequality itu tinggi di sebelah sini, ya. Relatively unequal distribution of income. Okay, so itu is the more or less in picture lah, menunjukkan macam mana kita boleh melihat, ya, dengan menggunakan Lorentz curve, ya, untuk melihat sama ada sebuah negara itu mempunyai inequality yang tinggi ataupun rendah. So di sini inequality rendah, so Gini coefficient definitely is smaller here, sebab kawasan ini adalah kecil dibandingkan dengan keseluruhan kawasan under this line of equality. Sebelah sini pula definitely will be bigger lah, because the area under the curve line of equality dengan Lorentz curve ini sangat besar. Okay, so that indicates greater inequality. Alright, benda sama, cuma saya nak menunjukkan if the Lorentz curve showing an increase in equality, if the curve is apa nama semakin sakit semakin menurun ya, away from the line of equality. Yeah. So different countries may have a different apa nama shape lah, yeah. But this one here, just to show you that for country B, country A may have the same Gini coefficient, tetapi shape-nya mungkin berbeza. Contohnya, for country A, the bottom apa nama 40% tu earning much less than country B. Tetapi in the among the groups higher apa nama kumpulan yang atasan ini, contohnya country A lebih ramai ya yang mendapat high income atau percentage of share dibandingkan dengan country B. So it depends ya. So the shape here is it does also indicate the patterns of inequality, tetapi dari segi measure of Gini coefficient nilainya mungkin sama, right? Area X dan area Y, okay, maybe the same, equals. Jadi tidak ada mengubah nilai Gini coefficient. Yeah. Alright. Now this is just to show you the different countries, different regions of the world with different Gini coefficient. Jadi if you look at this one, those countries with less than this is proportion, bukan ini nilai Gini coefficient. If less 0.25, for example, these are countries in Europe, northwestern Europe, these countries over here. Then if you look at the yellow ni, even America, walaupun negara yang kaya, tetapi inequality pun tinggi juga ya di negara Amerika. Sama macam negara Argentina, macam negara China, so on. This is in the year 2009. So among these countries, the blue one, the Canada, some parts of Europe, and Australia, so on, they have low level of inequality, lower than many of these other countries. Okay, so you find the level of inequality berbeza di antara negara-negara di dunia. Kita di Malaysia is between 0.45 to 0.49. Yeah, that's in 2000. So we still have a very high level of inequality in terms of income distribution di negara kita. Okay, this map is just to complement the other one, for you to see which country belongs to. Sorry, this one, yeah. So you can see from this map sini, okay. Right, negara yang ini tadi, this is interesting. 0.3434, 0.3 to 0.34 adalah negara apa? Mongolia. Jadi mungkin disebabkan oleh most of people are not earning high income, so the difference between the rich and the poor tidak banyak beza. Okay, tapi for rich countries, and this is where you probably find a lot of differences between the rich and the poor juga. Okay, now if you look at by regions in China, you find that the eastern part of China is mempunyai per capita income yang tinggi dibandingkan dengan apa nama regions in the northwestern part of, and the central and northwestern part of China. Okay, so so this is just to share. There's a lot of inequalities in the state between regions in China as well, in terms of income. Okay. Okay, again, case of China, the gap between the rich and the poor has risen in China, given also the fact that China has been uh, developing in the past years, yeah, um, to become one of the superpower in terms of economic superpower. Tapi dia punya inequality juga meningkat. Jadi semakin kaya negara tersebut, semakin kind of widen juga ya dia punya gap between the rich and the poor, right? So, for example, the Gini index, ya, basic Gini index, income inequality, sebenarnya pada dahulunya ya, is urban, tidak banyak perbezaan di antara yang miskin dengan yang kaya. Okay, less di sini, even among the rural people. But even among the rural people now, you can see that there is an increase, yeah, in the gap between the rich and the poor as well. So what about Malaysia? Income in Malaysia, income inequality in Malaysia. Kita kata tadi kalau kita tengok map tadi ataupun peta tadi menunjukkan bahawa income inequality in Malaysia is quite high, between the 0.45 to 0.49 Gini coefficient, yeah, right? So the rich between the rich and the poor. So that's the level in terms of Gini coefficient in Malaysia. I forgot what year was this. Sometime back lah, bukan sekarang. Yeah. But this is just to show you that we do have high inequality. Yeah, rank 39 and most unequal nation out of 136. And di kalangan Asia, di Asia saja, we come in number 3. Okay, third in Asia. Okay, so that is quite disturbing juga lah. Yeah, disturbing in the sense that so many poor people and also very few rich people. So the difference between in terms of income distribution tu tak not equal or unequal ataupun high rate of inequality income in terms of income distribution in the country. Okay. Right. So, for example, this is by the year lah. This is from 1970 to 2016. You can see that for the top 20%, they are earning income much. Dari dulu memang mereka dah high income, tetapi now dia punya income level ya semakin tinggi dibandingkan dengan walaupun apa nama tu, the middle income group are also improving, the bottom 40% also increasing, but still the gap between the rich and the poor, in fact, semakin besar, ya, the gap between this top earners ini dengan kumpulan bottom 40% ataupun the middle 40% di sini. Right? So overall, the Malaysia mean income has been increasing, and most of that increase in income belongs to the higher income group. Itu cara baca apa nama ni, graf ni lah. Okay, alright. This is also in terms of Gini coefficient. There's always up and down, but downward trend since 1975. The highest was in 1975 lah, between the rich and the poor. Paling besar, inequality then. But since then, since 1975, dah turun, hingga sekarang ni, in 2015, we should have figure yang saya tunjuk awal tadi was earlier on, bukan sekarang. It could be in the year 2000, but now it should be lower. I don't know, I mean the real figure up to 2015 dianya 0.40. There is apa nama tu improvement lah ya in terms of the um, inequality since then merujuk kepada Gini coefficient tadi. Okay, global trends. This one you can see that globally, for example, Latin America and Caribbean has decreased. Sub-Saharan Africa also have decreased. Yeah, Middle East and North Africa also decreasing, and advanced countries' economies also decreasing, but still high among the Caribbean Sub-Saharan country compared to other other parts of the world, right? Okay. So why does it exist? What is income inequality and why does it exist? Income inequality is based on the income differences between, for example, the people of Malaysia. So, so it is essentially the question of how much does one person make compared to the others, yeah, the other people. So, as a reasonable level of income of inequality of income is not necessarily bad. Ya. Kalau ada inequality, is not necessarily bad. Cuma what it is bad if the apa nama tu overall income tu rendah. Eh. So actually it can actually be stimulating for economic growth juga lah. So through social programs, contohnya through taxation system, cukai, sistem cukai, the government can reduce inequality and make sure that everyone has at least something to survive and can live a decent life. So what is done in Malaysia is we have our tax taxation or tax system, di mana the more you earn, the higher tax you have to pay, right? So, for example, I may be paying up to 20%, 17 to 20% of my income as a result of an increase in my earning, for example, right? Compared to when I was earning a little when I first started working. Yeah, jadi so people who earn less, some are not tax, tidak ada cukai, personal tax I'm talking about, yeah, income tax, tidak dikenakan cukai. That's one way to reduce inequality, yeah, in the country. So, for example, my wife, because her salary earning is less than a certain level, so she was not income was not taxable. But in my case, because I'm earning at certain levels, maka tax saya, cukai saya adalah dikenakan lebih tinggi. That's how the situation is throughout the country. So the more people earn, the more tax they have to pay. So those taxes akan digunakan, diagihkan semula, bukan not necessarily to give cash and all that to the low income group, although we do have that, yeah, now at the moment, ada diberikan kepada kumpulan B40 and all that, they receive some kind of cash payment, yeah. I forgot the name now, that the government give away, like dibagi kepada dua kali berilah, ya. 50% untuk bulan ini, another 50% 3 or 4 months later, something like RM500 per person, ya, are entitled and all that. Ya, itu cara mengagihkan semula, ya. And then also those taxes, cukai-cukai tadi boleh digunakan untuk program-program sosial, ya, untuk digunakan bagi meningkatkan the standard of living of everybody lah, ya. Itu tujuannya. So currently only 0.6% of Malaysian people live below the national poverty line. Jadi tak banyak lah, ya, which is a good number and shows that Malaysia is on the right track in terms of solving the problem of inequality, and also the problem of poverty as well. Yeah. So several things that could, and by the way, be mindful about the figure too. Some years back, bukan sekarang. Several things that could change to stimulate the reduction, of the income gaps. Itu adalah to increase the level of education. That's one way to go about it. To provide or to have access to education and increase level of education. So when Malaysians have higher level education and also skills, it will reduce the inequality in wages ataupun in earning. Okay, itu pertama. Keduanya, increase government wealth distribution efforts. In other words, the increase of government spending in social expenditure has been proven to reduce the income inequality and also lessen poverty in the country as well. Contohnya to provide clean water supply, electricity, and housing, ada rumah untuk, for example, PPRT and so on, that is to solve the problem, faced by the poor people. So but money spent by government comes from tax, cukai. And that's where the government get the money from. Other than, of course, in case of Malaysia, Petronas contribute certain percentage, but but mostly from tax, cukai. Personal tax, apa nama tu, cukai industri, cukai perdagangan dan sebagainya, import tax, export tax, macam-macam lah. That's where the government get the money. And so redistributing those wealth melalui social program dan sebagainya. And also, this is the one, increasing taxes for top income brackets. So the more you earn, the more tax you pay. So the tax rate for the top income bracket in Malaysia is low at 25%. Kira rendah lah. So maybe a safe haven for the high income earners. So they can put more money in Malaysia and tax less compared to the countries like Korea, di mana the top income earners are taxed at 38%. So in other words, if you earn 1 million, so 380,000 goes to the tax, contohnya. In Thailand, 35%. So Malaysia is not bad, in terms of personal tax, ataupun cukai. This is talking about tax on the person based on the income. All right. Okay. What is this? This is to compare between countries in terms of income gaps lah. Income gaps. Jadi Japan, for example, the average income of richest 10% as multiple of poorest 10%. So the bigger here, for example, Malaysia, the top 10% average income, is about almost 20 times the income of the lowest 10%. So I said, the Japan is not bad, the top 10% of the richest, earn only about 4.5 times the income of the poorest 10%. So high equality, or low inequality, whichever you use, in Japan compared to Malaysia, for example. So we have the highest, Singapore also, they do have a lot of differences between the top 10% earners and also bottom 20% earners, and so on. So itu yang dilihat. Tapi the other thing is here is the per capita gross national income dalam negara as of 2013. Jadi Japan, of course, per person 37,000 setahun, US dollar. And then South Korea, juga tinggi, 33,000 US dollars per person per year, dibandingkan dengan India cuma 5,000, di Vietnam about 5,000, Indonesia about 9,000, and so on, Malaysia about 22,000 per person per year, per capita. This is on average, But the problem with talking on average is that it tends to be misinterpreted, ya. The sense that ingatkan semua orang kaya, tapi tidak. Sebenarnya that 22.4 tu is just the average. There's so many people who earn less than that, ya, per capita. A lot of families are earning much lower than that. Okay. All right. So we're going to the other section. Who are the poor people? Right. So who are the poor people? This is the last segment of the lecture lah. The people who are poor, only certain section of society tended to be poorer than the rest of the people in the country. So the question is, who are they and why? Who are these people? Mostly people who live in the rural areas. That's number one. Number two is the women, yeah, tends to be poorer compared to men, and also minorities, indigenous people as well, and disabled people, plus children, yeah, and also youth. And these are the groups who are likely to be poorer compared to the rest. Termasuk juga, of course, the elderly lah, kalau mereka dah tak bekerja lagi. Okay, so let's look at the first group, poverty group tadi, yang rural poverty. So rural areas account for 3 in every 4, in other words, 3/4 of the people living in less than US $1 per day, and a similar share of the world population also suffering from malnutrition. So people who live in the rural areas tend to be poorer in terms of income per day. Yeah. In Asia and Africa, about 80 to 90% of the poor live in the rural areas. Okay. And in Latin America juga, 50% of the poor are living in the rural areas as well. So most of the rural people are involved in subsistence agriculture. They're not involved in industry, not involved in services sector, and so on. Mostly subsistence agriculture, not commercial agriculture. Yeah. So development then should be focused on rural areas. That's the satu what you call reason, yeah, rationale for rural development, yeah, because there are still, as far as our country concerned, also other parts of the world, developing countries, where the populations are still very much rural based, and where poverty is quite common, yeah, among these countries. So rural development should be emphasized. Rural development untuk membantu dari segi meningkatkan pendapatan dan juga untuk meningkatkan the quality of life, yeah, of the people in rural areas, termasuk roads, water supply, electricity, schools, clinics, hospital, and all that. Those are things that can improve the quality of life of the rural people. Okay, just sharing you some pictures of rural communities. All right. Okay, so faces of global rural poverty throughout the world. Okay, so children who probably don't go to school, not enough food, they don't have a proper salon, yang gunting rambut istri mungkin suami, and then farming secara subsistence, carrying water from a distance just to get some drinking water, right? Contoh di bawah ni, and so on lah, ya, yang menunjukkan keadaan di kawasan luar bandar, ya, faces rural poverty in the rural areas. Okay, so if you look at the rural versus urban in terms of percentage below national poverty line, for example, but the survey was done in different years lah, but it's quite close actually, yeah. Kalau kita banding di sub-Saharan Africa, Negara seperti Burkina Faso, 52.4% of those who are poor are living in the rural areas. The urban population kurang sikit, ya. Nationally, this is what it is, ya. 46.4% who are poor. Uganda, for example, masih tinggi 41.7% in the rural areas, but less in the urban areas. Okay, jadi that's how you read this table here. So what we can say from here is that most of people who are poor are living in the rural areas compared to the urban areas. Sebabnya ada kaitan dengan employment sebenarnya. People in the urban areas have paid employment. There are industries, there are service sectors which can provide jobs for the urban population. Jadi, compared to people in the rural areas, particularly those who are involved in subsistence agriculture, for example, where the income derived from agriculture is considered quite small, yeah, and the family size is quite big. So if you talk about GDP or GNP per capita, agak kecil, ya. Okay, right. So that's the comparison. The other group that tends to be poor is women, or the women's group, ya, orang wanita, kaum wanita, sorry, ya. So throughout the world, about 70% of the poor are women. Yeah, 70% of the poor in the world are women. And this group, women, yeah, either do not have or have very little access to education, and also other government programs as well, yeah, particularly in the developing countries. Right, so most households are headed by women, particularly single mothers are poor as well. And generally, the income levels of women in most developing countries are low compared to the income levels of men. Okay, so all right, so that's why women tend to be poorer compared to the rest of the population. Okay, tapi in terms of the hours of work, mereka tu banyak menyumbang. Yeah, they work hard actually. The women work hard. For example, in developing countries, women produce up to 80% of the food. Okay, and what else? But 2/3 of the global illiterate population are women. Right, kebanyakan mereka tidak pergi sekolah. Right. So, and the world's working hours, but they only receive the 2/3 of the world working hours, but they receive only about 10% of the world's income and own less than 1% of the world's property. Itu keadaan generally lah among women, poor women in developing countries particularly. Yeah, why women are poorer compared to men. Okay, so what do they do? Some places may still exist. We don't know. This is in Africa. This is an old picture, carrying water using containers and all that. Yeah. But the fact is, some of these people who live in some of these poor African countries, they do not have access to clean water supply. Okay. This is probably in Bangladesh. They have so many children. Ya, itu lagi menambahkan keadaan, ya, apa nama, menyusahkan lagi keadaan, ya. Poor, and yet the number of children banyak, ya. So, and then also some features regarding how to, for example, on family planning and so on, yeah. And this is women's in the farm, yeah, they're doing the work, even carrying babies, ya, ataupun anak, ya, They have to carry them because nobody to look after the children at home, yeah, while working. Yeah, in this case, it is harvesting apa namanya tea, yeah, the tea plantation, right? And in I think this is in I don't know, is it Afghanistan or ataupun I think so. Um, Harvesting cotton. Right. So women. Now the other group yang tends to be poor is the minorities. Minorities, top indigenous people tends to be living in poverty. Um, so there is a high and persistent correlation between being poor and also being indigenous. Examples, we have the indigenous people in South America. We have the indigenous people in Australia, so also indigenous people in Malaysia, yeah, um, and most of them are also living in the rural areas as well. People in Africa, America, and so on, and some of them may be disabled and also displaced as well, yeah. Um, and these are the minorities, yeah, including children, yeah, and the youth. Jadi right? So, for example, in Mexico and the Philippines, and this one is the Chiapas in the Mexico, for example. About 15,000 indigenous people died due to poverty and curable diseases ataupun illness, penyakit yang boleh diubat, tetapi because they don't have access to health services because of being poor, they just die because of that disease. And more than half of the population of Chiapas lives in poverty. It has the highest rate of illiteracy, and 60% of homes have no clean drinking water. And most of the land was owned by rich landowners, so they have to rent the land, yeah, for farming and so on. The Philippines, for example, among the indigenous people, they have this issue of threats of land tenure, yeah, land ownership, land tenure system, the lack of access to basic amenities, yeah, sama juga tadi dengan electricity, water, and so on, yeah, and also some internal displacement, di mana mereka terpaksa dipindah dari kawasan mereka for national interest, for example. Right? Just like what we have here in Malaysia, some people are being displaced because of the dams being built to generate electricity and so on. Yeah, so a lot of people because of the flooded areas due to the building of dam, they have to be moved away from the original place, and that happened in the apa nama in Lubuk Antu or Batangai, and also now in Blaga or beyond Blaga. Yeah. Okay. Or Sungai Asap, whatever you call it. Okay, so this is among the indigenous people. This is the orang asli lah. Some of you may be familiar, some of you may be not. This is the condition. Jadi mereka orang asal, tetapi mereka adalah yang di antara yang termiskin, ya, di Malaysia sekarang ini. Okay, in other parts of Malaysia, these are some of the faces of poverty in other parts of Malaysia. Ada yang begging on the street, yeah, the kind of house they stay in. Probably at the outskirts of the town. This is most probably people who works in the construction industry, and the family have to follow them to the town. Yang hari ini di sini adalah yang di sinilah. Ini lama sudah, not now. Ini mereka ni penyokong Barisan Nasional, tetapi this is where they live. Right? That's very ironic. This one perhaps related to, I don't know, tidak ada tempat untuk belajar ataupun maybe now no internet connectivity and so on, yeah, and the living conditions where they live. So, right? So it's both mostly in the rural areas, but also in the towns as well, among the indigenous people, right? And this one is a picture of the Penan in Sarawak, right? Penan is one of the orang asli lah ya, di Sarawak. Um, so they have this house here actually built by the government. Very nice house, but they prefer to stay in something like this. Yeah, the one ini tempat mereka tinggal, and they move around a lot um, to find food and so on in Sarawak. Okay, and this is in Peru. Another picture just to show the indigenous people and what they do for a living. Yeah, this is in the Philippines and Brazil among the indigenous people. Yeah? So why are indigenous people poor? There's some reasons that they are poor, or some factors which contribute to poverty among indigenous people. Often they are victims of marginalization and also discrimination, yeah, against the indigenous people. They often lack the rights to land, right? No land rights, territories, and resources that have nurtured them for generations. So they have been living there for generations, but they don't own the land, for example. Yeah. So that's satu isu lah yang berlaku. So and all too often this will result in poverty. So this is why indigenous people who account for 5% of the world population are the 15% of those living in poverty. Jadi kebanyakan mereka tu telah tergolong dalam kumpulan dikatakan miskin lah, ya, throughout the world. Okay. Then you have the disabled people among the minorities tadi. They also have tendency to be poor because of their conditions, ya, yang miskin. Okay, so this example. Right, so poor disabled people live under the double burden of poverty and disability. And also in developing countries, the responsibility of caring and taking care of them falls on the family bagi yang disabled tadi. And in developed countries, they are more fortunate. In other words, there are usually grants, support system, special institutions, and special jobs, yeah, to help people, for disabled people to live their full lives, yeah, despite of their or in spite of their disability. So without support from the state or from the government, it is very difficult for many of them, these people who are disabled, to have access to education, to have special care, and also to have jobs. Yeah. So disabled often have difficulty to access transportation as well, communication, and also information. So they have a lot of disadvantage uh, being disabled. Yeah? So that contribute to them being poor. Yeah. And then of course children they are not earning, they're still young. So these are people who are also grouped as poverty group lah. Yeah. So poverty has very severe effect, particularly on children, in terms of their growth, in terms of their development. So in poor families, children are very badly affected by malnutrition, and it has its most severe effect on children between the ages of 6 months and 2 years. So that during the early development stage, yeah. So malnutrition, yang tak cukup makanan lah, zat makanan sebagainya, also means that the children can more easily get diseases, yeah, sakit, yeah. And so they can either die young or have poor physical and mental development as a result of malnutrition. Okay, so poverty also as a family, yeah, people come from poor families, yeah, limits the access children to have educational opportunities as well. Um, they can't go to school because they are poor, especially for early childhood development. Yeah? So because of that, many poor children also leave school. They do not finish schooling, and before even completing secondary school, some even at the primary school, left school at primary school level. Okay, so that's for children. And then, of course, the other group who are poor because they're not employed, particularly are the youth. Yeah. So poverty and lack of education limits employment opportunities for the young people as well. So it's all related, actually. Yeah. If you come from poor families and if you're young, you tend to be poor as well. Yeah. So in South Africa, for example, with high unemployment rate, many young people have no hope of finding work in the formal sector. Jadi kalau nak pergi ke bandar pun, they have difficulty because they don't have the skill, they don't have education. Yeah, um, so it's a problem for them. Yeah, so they tends to be because of that they tends to be poorer because they're not earning. They're not employed. So, yeah, so they ended up involved in social problems, for example, crime, gangs, drug ataupun alcohol abuse, ya, among the urban youth. So that's the problem. Okay, jadi what else? So those are the groups which we can classify as the poor or tendency to be poor. Last group who tends to be poor ataupun living in poverty are the elderly. Elderly ini orang yang sudah tua, sudah pencen contohnya, tak dapat bekerja, they don't earn money, so they sometimes they have to depend on the family members, anak-anak, cucu dan sebagainya. If they don't have, then that's a real problem, yeah. So older people are usually not working anymore and have to be taken care by the rest of the society. Okay. So some elderly depends on pension for survival. Those who have pension lah, tapi yang tak ada pension tu tidak ada saving and so on, susah sikit ya. And quite often also shared with other family members who are unemployed. Jadi even with pension pun dikongsikan sama dengan ahli-ahli keluarga yang lain yang mungkin tidak ada pekerjaan juga. So they have to survive on that. Right? And in many developing countries too, older people also often look after their grandchildren. That's quite normal in our part of the world, in our society. That's quite normal that the elderly, they don't just sit home, but they help looking after the grandchildren. So they continue to perform unpaid domestic work for their families as well. Right? This is especially true for older women. So with increasing aging population like Malaysia, I think like the rest of the world, we have increasing percentage of aging population. The number of elderly population who are poor will also increase, yeah, in the future. Okay, so so what will be the best kind of development considering the topic that we have discussed today? What should be the kind of development? Is the conventional development works or does it work? Yeah, does it solve the problem of inequality or poverty among its population? So trainer in 19 trainer nama orang bukan pekerjaan, nama orang in 1995. This is what he said about the conventional development ataupun pembangunan yang biasa, ya, yang biasa dilakukan, ya, yang biasa dibuat. So conventional development is therefore only development in interest of the rich. So from his observation, menguntungkan orang yang kaya. It is always important to ask questions according to him, like what sort of development is taking place here, who will benefit from the program, development program, and what things are being developed. Those important question to ask, ya. So according to trainer, kadang-kadang dia kata conventional development adalah is a process which develops mostly the wrong things, in view of the most urgent needs. In other words, the most urgent needs are not met through tidak dapat dicapai dengan menggunakan conventional development tadi. Right? So conventional development, um, pembangunan konvensional lah maksudnya, is only that type of development you get when you gear everything, buat satu ya to maximize GNP. Kalau tujuannya untuk meningkatkan kekayaan negara, for example, maximize GNP, uh, maximize business turnover and profits to those who have capital to invest. Jadi benefits for those who have the money, the capital, right? So the rich, in other words, it benefits the rich people lah. In other words, the top income earners and so on. Yang kita lihat awal tadi, ya. So there is a huge gap between what is considered appropriate development and the conventional development. Jadi apa yang dimaksudkan dengan appropriate development? Kalau conventional development tu hanya menguntungkan sebagian kecil daripada penduduk, maka ianya tidak dapat diteruskan. So what will be more appropriate? Right? So jadi um, the shift, yeah. So we have to redefine the development objective, yeah. Instead of just focusing on the GNP, just to raise the GNP ataupun to increase the growth in the economy, as it is practiced under conventional development, it should be shifted to um, from being that to um, increase the living standard of the population, not just on their GNP alone, not focusing on how much money ataupun income per capita, but rather how it is distributed. Yeah? Otherwise, the majority will not benefit from the growth in the GNP tadi. Yeah? So the approach to development should be made more comprehensive, whereby income growth will bring benefits to all societies. Itu yang dinamakan sebagai appropriate development tadi. Yeah? So what choices do we have? Yeah. So in terms of policy choices, for example, to reduce poverty, um, the the poverty reduction, reduction tu tadi proses untuk mengurangkan ya kemiskinan. Ada dua twin function. One, strategi tadi lah, dua function. One is to is the rate of growth, increase the rate of growth, economic growth, ataupun kekayaan lah sebuah negara, that has to be there. And then at the same time, changes in the income distribution, cara ataupun macam mana pendapatan tersebut di distribute ataupun diagihkan, So change the function of income distribution through policies which are designed to change factors of production, right? So, for example, you have to change the concentration of assets, the power, and education structure to make sure that it is distributed ataupun diagihkan kepada yang memerlukannya lah. For example, access to education and so on. Policies that change the distribution of wealth through income ataupun property tax structure, and I think we have done that, in our country and also some other countries, whereby, as I said just now, those who are earning more, they have to be taxed more as well, and also policy that raise the distribution of wealth, kekayaan, among the poor sector, the population through government direct support to the poor. So the poor need to be supported, yeah, special or certain programs that assist the poor people, for example. Okay, and of course, for example, international aids with the uh, for irrigation to help the poor in terms of their farming and so on, so that they can produce more from their piece of land which they farm. Okay, so and together with increased economic growth, the reduction in inequality and also income differences are believed to be the key in reducing poverty. Okay, this is according to the Overseas Development Institute. Jadi perlu ada uh, usaha untuk not only to increase economic growth, but also in terms of the reducing the differences, yeah, in terms of and how those incomes are being distributed as well. So three main approaches which they recommended is one is to promote opportunity for the poor who lack assets, and also access to markets so that they can increase the income and eventually escape from poverty. Yeah, provided promoting opportunity, provide opportunities for the poor. And also to the second one, the second main approach is to enhance security. But security, not we're not just talking about security in terms of daripada apa nama tu, um, bad people and so on, yeah. But we're talking about security in terms of jobs, so yeah. So reducing vulnerability and also enabling the poor to cope with unfavorable situations, yeah. Juga dapat membantu, ya, membantu mereka yang miskin tadi. The third approach is to facilitate empowerment, yeah. It could be political or through institutional work to help the poor people, giving them power, giving them to empower them to do something, yeah, or to be involved and so on, yeah, so that they can do things on their own later on. So, for example, encourage smaller families. That's one way, yeah. Instead of having, remember I show you the picture of family in Bangladesh where they have so many children and yet they're living in poverty. So they can reduce, yeah, having smaller families instead of bigger families. That is one way, yeah, to help them. Reduce child mortality because this is what it is, yeah. Child mortality ini adalah tinggi di kalangan mereka yang miskin, ya. And because of high child mortality, the tendency to have fatality rate yang tinggi di kalangan mereka adalah juga satu perkara yang berlaku di mana because of high child mortality maka they need to have more children, at least some of them will survive. That's the argument, yeah, behind having high apa namanya child high fertility rate, kalangan mereka yang miskin, ya. Alright, so to eradicate poverty, um, there's so many thoughts about that, yeah, and what to do and so on. Jadi you can click on this link regarding the needs to address issue of poverty. Yeah, this is the end of the lecture, by the way. Yeah, then if you want to also, these are some of the link to see to refer to some of the poorest countries in the world as well. Yeah, so boleh lihat di sini. I'm not going to show you that. Yeah, so that's all for today. Is there any question? or comments? Are we still there?
Yes,
Okay,
Yes, Prof.
I thought I lost you. Okay, so let me stop the recording. Yeah, but if there is any question, you can ask me later.